Of audio, vision, news, and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us this week from London, Ontario, Canada, weighing in at 125 pounds soaking wet, Matt the Anvil Scott. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I feel like I should be a boxer now, though.
I was actually more going for the wrestling in the Bret Hart era, so.
Well, that is very kind of you.
Yeah. So considering he is from Canada.
And I love the 125 pounds.
Well, you know.
I thought it was 125 kilos.
I'm sorry, 125 kilos. What is that in pounds?
A lot.
Okay.
That's a lot.
All right, that other voice that you hear if you're not watching the video is Mr. Bradford Benn. He is, of course, the digital janitor of AV Nation, but more importantly, where his paycheck comes from is Harmon. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. How are you?
I am fabulous.
I shouldn't ask how you are because you're injured, so I'm just going to take the
You know what? More
for
people
you.
listen to this podcast and watch it, and I was going to just try to avoid that whole subject.
So for those of you who can't see the podcast, Tim is in a full body cast. His one arm is free, which is how he's running the mouse, and then the rest of it, Michelle's behind him, and he's basically pushing him around in a cart, kind of like Hannibal Lecter, but he doesn't have the face mask on. And it's really a good look for you, though, Tim. I just want to know, can we come down and sign the cast?
You can sign the cast. No, all right. So I do not have a cast. Nothing's broken, right?
Oh, that's right. It's a big
your pride.
Except for my pride, yes, because 2 nights ago. So here's what we got. We have we had an old rocking chair in my home. That decided it was time to give up the ghost and end its life, and it decided at the very moment that I sat down in it that was the time to give up the ghost and end life. So we have hardwood floors in a lot of my house, and so I sat down and the chair went bye-bye, and I landed full on, darn near 300 pounds of me straight on my elbow, and I have what is called a sprained elbow.
As opposed to me when I did it 20 years ago. For those of you who can see the video, took the chunk out of my elbow that's missing a piece of bone after 20 plus years. I didn't go to the hospital. I just rubbed some dirt on it. It wasn't until like 2 days later when I went, it's really not getting any better. And the doctor goes, do you know you're missing a piece of bone? So,
That
I
sounds
feel your
oddly
pain. Matt's
familiar.
just making fun of you. I'm at least
Well, I am. My elbow's fine, but I figured I'd tape it up so Tim would
That
feel
was very nice of you, yes.
Granted, if we're discussing this, I have a crack from there to about here in my forearm that I left for about a month. And
This isn't the only injury I've ever had. I've never broken a bone, which is very nice.
Oh. That takes the fun right out of it. You're not even trying.
But
No.
Tim, Matt, I thought you were wearing that in solidarity with all your broken Cowboys.
Ooh.
Wow.
I didn't wrap my foot.
Okay.
Yeah, we won. It's all right.
Yeah. The year's still young.
Oh, yeah. No, we have tons of time to screw this up.
Yeah.
Also, so did the Bears.
We're in first
Right.
today.
It was proven last night, for those of you who watch American football, by the, the Chiefs versus the Broncos.
The Broncos versus Chiefs.
Deciding to share the ball more than they should have.
Yes.
An awful lot of sharing. It was a very nice gesture, though, how much they shared.
Now, one of the things, speaking of sharing, we should share with our audience is Tim is solely going to be throwing up softballs this week while Matt and I pontificate, because I've taken over the episode.
Yes. Well, except for one thing. Except for one thing, and I'm going to take it back for just 2 seconds, because we're going to do some industry news really quickly, because this came down this morning.
That up as a question of what do we think about it?
Well, it does. But here's the thing. So the news of the week is there is a new CEO at Cedia. A couple months ago, Cedia announced that they were looking for a new CEO.
And there is no truth to the rumor that I turned it down.
Oh, that is true, that you did not turn it down. But the new head is Vin Bruno. And if you've been around the industry for any amount of time and had any interaction with Crestron, you know Vin. Vin's a great guy, right?
Oh,
Vin
yeah.
is probably one of the nicest people that I have met in this industry. And they announced, Cedia sent out a press release this morning announcing Vin as the new head of Cedia. We did reach out to Crestron for kind of a somewhat of a statement. We got one actually just 30 seconds ago. Says basically, we think that Cedia has made a great decision to make Vin its next CEO. We are proud of Vin. We think he will be very successful and do a great job. End quote from Crestron. So, Matt, we'll start with you on this one because you're the Cedia guy than either Matt, Bradford or I. Good move by Cedia.
I think it's a great move. Vin's one of those guys who, especially when I really started to actually get involved in the industry, he was one of the people that was always open to chat, whether it was via social or at a trade show or whatnot. He was very, very quick to, just bring you into the fold and make you feel important, whether you were or not. And let's be honest, sometimes I'm not. Like today when I'm here with you guys. So I think
by association.
Well, we're going with that. That's what I'm hoping for. That's why I hang out with Brad so much.
But back smarter.
Pretty much. But as far as Cedia bringing on Vin, I think it's a good move. I'm glad that they brought in somebody who is very, very energetic and excited and personable. He's got some great business sense. I think he'll do a fabulous job. But I really appreciate the fact that they brought on somebody who should be very effective at helping to build the Cedia brand. Because as we know, both for Cedia and Infocom, we need, especially as people involved in it who sell off that notoriety, we need those brands built stronger. We need them to be more forward-facing outside of the industry, beyond the industry to the end users, because that's what makes those industries effective for us as dealers and members. So I think Vin was a great move.
All right, Mr. Benn, when it comes to moving from a manufacturer to more of a association, right? I mean, this would be the equivalent of you, all joking aside, you being the new head of Infocom. Is this, how difficult of a transition do you think that would be?
Actually, I think it's a pretty big one because when you're marketing for a brand, your key number one job, despite what everyone says, is to help bring more money into said brand. Whereas at Cedia, your key number one job is to help make people more aware of the industry that you're representing. So it does take a slightly different approach. Also, the other difference, and this is more from my external experience working on boards, is it's difficult to run a company or a trade organization that's staffed by volunteers. To be honest, you can't say, hey, you need to get this to me by Monday or you're fired because, well, I'm a volunteer. I'm doing this. I'm on vacation. What do you do? So I think that's going to be a big change. But I do think bringing in an industry, I don't know, an industry person is a good move for the company of Cedia to help foster the brands and make it more attractive and explain to people why they need Cedia. I think trade industries in general are a good thing because it's kind of why can't I just put a boom box in the corner for my jewelry store, or when I'm at home, why do I want to put in Apple TV in every room and run good network cable? I think the industry itself is a good thing. I do think Vin will be a good advocate for the technologies.
Yeah, so, and I would agree with that. I mean, one of the things that he was not in charge of, but one of the things he was involved in way back when, he was one of the first champions, along with George Tucker, who is again my right side of my brain here at AVNation. But George was.
Is that the side you hit on the ground when you fell?
It is the side I hit on the ground. Yeah, sorry. But George and Venn were one of the first guys at Crestron to start doing the social media. Way back. I mean, back in when Twitter first came out in 06 and 07. That was Vin is a very forward-thinking guy when it comes to marketing, when it comes to brand awareness. I think he's going to do really, really well. I'm very excited. Very excited. I mean, and Cedia, not for nothing. Cedia is next month. So you get to meet, the new CEO. We're working with the folks there. We will be doing a live podcast of AVWeek at Cedia next month.
Aren't you hosting a panel while you're there at Cedia that you completely forgot about in your drug-addled state because of your broken elbow?
Hosting a panel. If you are a CSP, then and that's a Crestron service provider. On Thursday, October 15th, from 3 to 5 p.m., is the CSP meeting at Cedia Expo 2015, and there will be a panel discussion moderated by Tim Albright of AVNation, Adapt, Change, and Grow. That sounds cool. It features CSP Advisory Board member Bob Horn, Tom Fisher, and Tom Milpacker of InfuseBox. So, yeah, check that out. If you are a CSP, if you are a Crestron service provider, check that out and come join us on Thursday. So, but yeah,
I'm going to be on vacation again that week, so
you should come down to Dallas.
Well, I think if I come down to Dallas, my wife will let me leave and stay in Dallas. Instead, I'm going up to Canada while Matt's not there, I think is the better plan.
Probably best, yeah. You could just go to AMX and write it off, you know.
Vacation with the wife. You got really did hit your head.
All right. Okay, so we started this episode 213, and kind of a somewhat of a not a lark, but we had gotten a couple questions on some of our different back and forths, and we said, you know what, let's answer some questions. Let's do that. So first question is this, and Bradford, we'll start with you. I'm going to chime in on this, but give it to you guys first to run with it. So the question is, where should integrators draw the line for intellectual property when it comes to control code? Does the customer own the code, or does the integrator? Or is it a definition of who owns the module? This is assuming you're modularizing your code. Can a price be associated with providing the customer with complete uncompiled control code, including the modules? How should an integrator assess that kind of cost to the customer? Mr. Benn, you are not a control programmer, but you do work for Harman, who owns AMX. So let's start with you, and let's kind of go down here. What is the thinking? You can give me your personal opinion as a former integrator, or AMX by Harman's.
So I'm going to start with my personal feelings, and also I'm going to do that disclaimer because I was raised by the modern equivalent of wolves. I'm not a lawyer, so obviously check with your lawyer when you're doing this. But there is a definite difference of, are you licensing the module to be used, or the code to be used at one site, or are you creating a work for hire? And there's a huge difference legally into who owns that intellectual property. It's kind of like if you're working for a company and you develop something cool, like say the 3M Post-it note, do they own that, or do you own it because you did it in your spare time? And it's kind of in that same vein. In my opinion, the licensing versus ownership also comes down to what your warranty is. If I have to warrant the system for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I want to own that code so that if someone messes with it, I can void the warranty, or license it to that site with an end user license that says you shall not reverse compile, blah, 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 blah. But then when the warranty's up and they want the code, here you go. But then comes the other side of if they're doing, let's say it's a chain store and they're doing 50 stores, I want a residual on all 50 stores if they're going to use the same code over and over. So to be honest, I think that both sides have merit. I think if you want to lock in a customer for life, you own the code and license it to them. However, that also means that if you go bankrupt, if you have a falling out with the customer is sitting there in the lurch. So I think it's just something that has to be negotiated. When I was an integrator, we licensed it. You did not own it unless you paid more to own it. And part of that was because part of it was to lower the price because we could reuse the modules and reuse the R&D.
Yeah.
And part of it was that 50-store issue of you've used this in one store, you have to pay us a royalty when you use it on the next store. Now, having said that, you look at something like RMS from AMX, you can buy the server or you can license the service. Same thing, we give you the option as a provider, which one makes more sense for you. And part of this comes out to which one's better for your customer. I've done projects when I was an integrator where the restaurant wanted to license it because of the high failure rates of restaurants. They didn't have the money to pay to own it. And obviously paying to own it is going to cost more than licensing it. That goes without saying. So that's a big difference. The other thing to consider is, what is your cost of support going to be? As what actually started this out was Matt and I joking on our internal AV Nation chat can I charge someone extra if they're tweaking the code so that I know I'm going to have to go fix it tomorrow, at which point I went, this is going to be a great topic. So this is why we decided to take over the show. And that's actually a very big thing of, if you give them the uncompiled code, they can tweak it till it squeaks, and now you have to go fix the system.
Okay.
It's
A couple of things here. Hang on for a second, because I wanna completely disagree with you, Bradford, which I don't do very often, and I do so very hesitantly because you're so much smarter than I am.
you're definitely drugged up with painkillers. I can
I
tell.
am. So a couple of things. First of all, nearly every control processor that I'm aware of can tell me when the last time that code was uploaded.
Mhm.
Right? So if you keep good records, you know good and well when the last time you were out there, and you could look at the client and say, look, somebody else uploaded this. I don't care what revision you call it, right? Somebody else uploaded this code, and it wasn't us.
Right.
So then you put it in your contract that if somebody else messes with it in the first year or whatever, then yeah, you can charge them for it.
Yep.
And I would disagree with you because you made the statement that if you want to keep a client for life, you don't give them the code. I would argue the exact opposite of that.
And
You
you're
entrust
right.
that with your client. You entrust that with your client, and if you have a good enough relationship with your client and they have the means, then they're going to call you back. Understand, I come from the land of my first few jobs in AV was in education, right? And not only, I didn't work for U of I that had, millions of dollars a year for an AV budget. I worked for a community college, right? Last year I was there, my budget for all of AV to support 180 rooms was $36,000, right? So we had to make every
iPod?
Huh?
Every room got its own iPod?
Yes, everyone got its own iPod. So we had to make every penny count.
And I did misstate that. I should have said for life. I should have said kept a revenue stream open because they're going to have to relicense and resupport.
Yeah.
Also comes the thing of what happens. I see your point of the giving a good client the code. Yeah, agree. We've done that with stuff. However, the who owns it, what happens when it doesn't work when you've given the client the code starts to become a very fuzzy line of we gave you the code, you broke it, now we have to charge you to fix it, or is it?
Absolutely.
And that starts to become an interesting line to walk. I'm not saying it's an impossible line to walk. It's just something that has to be documented. Just like any other business situation, you got to document and outline the scope of work, the expectations, the deliverables, and the schedule. And I do think that there are pluses, like you said, of yes, you can know when the code was uploaded, but that's not always great if you have to drive an hour each way.
But again, it's part of the. So first of all, that goes back to the service contracts, right? That goes back to documenting. At AVWeek, we warranty our work for the first year. So if something happens or whatever, it's on us to make sure it's right and make sure it's fixed. But if there are certain provisions in there, right? I'm not going to give somebody who doesn't know what they're doing a blank check to jack around and learn what the code I'm giving them, and then us pay to have somebody go out there and fix it. Yes, if they have messed something up, again, this goes back to your documentation, it goes back to the contract. If they've messed something up, then it's on them to make it right and to pay for those changes that we have to come back and fix. Now, if we've done something wrong and it's messed up, absolutely, it's on us.
Yeah, agreed. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah.
And I do think the subscription service is kind of what almost all industries are going to nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
You pay $100 a month and you get every piece of software ever made from Adobe. Sorry, $50 a month. Great model. They get recurring revenue. If you license the code and say sell a support contract, you're going to have a nice revenue stream for a while. If you hand out the code and there may not be a support contract on it, it's a different model. Or if you hand out the code and deliver the code that's considered a work for hire, you're not guaranteed getting the service contract, and also your service contract costs become very different. So I see logic in both. There are some times where people have written proprietary cool whiz bangs of the example of I have a tool that does this and makes everyone's life easier. And you don't want to give that away. So do you give that as a compiled piece, as a module they can bring in if they're doing a work for hire, or do you charge them more? The example I use is a company like TechSpa or TechMD, where their business model is providing that programming. So that's kind of If you give it away, you don't really have much value to it, because my big thing is, if something's free, everyone takes it for granted. If you put a price of $100 on it and then discount it, you've at least given a value to what you're providing. So
Let me
I
give you an
think,
example of that, and that's I'm doing a job right now with an integrator, and we ran across what they ran across Analog Way is a switcher manufacturer. Analog Way actually paid to have a module created. I believe that they've got one for Crestron and AMX both. I know for a fact they have one for Crestron because that's the one we're using. It does some really, really crazy sick things when it comes to the interface and the. I mean, it literally it's drag and drop, and you can resize and pinch and all this stuff. It cost them somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to have that module developed. The module itself costs five or $6,000 from Analog Way. You have a license, right? A one-use license per program for this thing. Now, is it worth it? Depends, right? It depends on the installation. It depends on what you're trying to do. You know, you're gonna put it in somebody's house, Bill Gates' house, yeah, probably. You know.
no, it's all run by Zunes.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Scott, what from your standpoint, and let's talk about both resi and the commercial world. You know, what do you feel when it comes to, you know, all kidding aside, and you know, if you give them the code and they screw it up, can I charge them more? But when it comes to, you know, both residential and commercial, how do you work that